All right, are we live? Excellent. Hi, everyone. Okay, we're going to give a couple minutes for people to log in and settle down, grab your seat, synchronize your watches. Today we're going to talk about flow. Flow state is a real thing. It is a psychological state. Now, for those of you who don't know, your brains operate at a number, hi, Fatima, how are you? At a number of very interesting frequencies. So on the top end, at the very peak performance level of your brain, you're working on gamma waves. Gamma waves are somewhere between 32 and 100 hertz. And you know, have you ever had the experience of being like, if you're in a car accident or something really dramatic happens and time slows down like that, and you can feel everything, and seconds take minutes, and you can make decisions very quickly? That is gamma. That's when your brain is operating like at its peak. Your prefrontal cortex is well lit up. And you can think about a lot of things all at the same time, and that's why it feels like time is slowing down. So, hi Fatima. So a little bit below that is beta, and that is where most of us are most of the time. This is general operating frequencies for the human brain. A little bit more relaxed than that when you're watching TV, you might be an alpha. And in alpha brain waves, that's when you're like more relaxed and chilled out. If you do meditation or mindfulness, that can slip you into alpha. And then just below alpha is theta. And theta is dream, like when you're just falling asleep or when you're just waking up or when you're starting to get into that dream state, that's theta waves. And somewhere between alpha and theta, which is where you're conscious but not quite aware, that's where flow is. And the very interesting thing about the human brain is that you can do incredible things in that state where you're very conscious but not very aware. And the difference between consciousness and awareness is, obviously, if you're conscious, you're taking in information, you're processing information, not like when you're sleeping. But awareness is different. Awareness is when you are aware of everything around you. And in flow, you become less aware of everything around you, but more hyper-conscious or more focused on one particular thing. So interestingly, I mean, in sports, sorry Fatima, I'm speaking too fast. I'll slow down. So in sports, you'll often hear great athletes describe their best performances as being the most effortless. So they'll say, man, that was amazing. I didn't even feel it. The team was around me. I felt like I was at one with the ball and with the pitch, and I felt like I was at one with the tools that I was using. And so their best performances feel like the most effortless. Artists will say the same thing, that their best masterpieces were painted in single epic events, and they didn't even feel time go by. And the reason that they don't feel time go by is because we shut down the prefrontal cortex part of our brains during flow. So for me, I started to understand this about myself when I was in my first master's degree. So this was a number of years ago. My ex-wife would drop me off at the library. I would spend the day at the library, and then she would pick me up, and I would get out of the library, get into the car, and immediately complain that I had a horrible headache. The reason I had a headache was because I was dehydrated and I was hungry. And the reason I was dehydrated and hungry is because I had spent the entire day in a flow state and I didn't even know it. So what happened was I would sit down, I would start to do reading and research, and hours would go by. I didn't notice anyone around me. I didn't hear anything around me. I didn't have to go to the washroom. I didn't get hungry. I didn't get thirsty. There were no distractions. So I just sat there and I could write very quickly and process incredible amounts of information very quickly. And so it was really amazing, actually, that I could get so much work done. But at the end of the day, I was really, hi Briar, good to see you. It was really amazing at the end of the day, and I thought, oh man, I wonder if I can tap into this intentionally. So I started to learn about flow states and how to get into it intentionally. And what I learned was, okay, so flow, the study of flow states and how to get your brain into that place where you're doing incredible things without any effort at all. There's a number of ingredients to that. So the flow state, there's a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I think is how you pronounce his name. It's like really He's the originator of the idea of flow states mentally. Hi, Nihal. And he was the one who first put up to the list of traits of flow states, things that he says, you know what, in order for it to qualify as a flow state or to be something that you're going to be in flow about, it has to be something that you're passionate about. It can't be something that you're doing begrudgingly or chores. You can't get into a flow state doing something you hate. It has to involve risk. There has to be some level of the possibility of failure. It has to be novel. There has to be some expression of creativity, some ability for pattern recognition. It has to be complex and dynamic in terms of the environment. So there has to be some way for you to constantly have to adapt to new information that's coming at you. So if you're surfing or if you're snowboarding, you would know this as, you know, you're going down the hill or you're just catching the wave, and time doesn't matter, space doesn't matter, you lose track of yourself, but the environment that you're in is very dynamic and it requires you to make adjustments all the time. Another quality is immediate feedback. So you need to know that you're doing well or improving or amalgamating the information or accomplishing what you're doing well consistently at the time. So immediate feedback is one. And then I think one of the most interesting ones for me is embodiment. Check Mihai, whatever his name is, Mihai. I'm just going to call him by his first name, Mihai. I know I can pronounce that. Anyway, so one of the things that Mihai said was that there has to be a sense of deep embodiment, that there's a connection between your mind and your body. You know, we commonly think of ourselves as like just spiritual entities or intellectual entities sitting inside of a meat bag that drives us around, and this body here is just a vehicle that takes us through the world. Well, it's not entirely true, actually. Science has shown us now over the last number of years that we actually are deeply embodied as humans. What we do in our bodies affects our minds intensely and immediately. So if you smile, for example, it'll start to release serotonin and dopamine in your heads, and you'll become happier. You have the ability to react. Your eye can close faster than your brain can recognize that a fly is coming toward it or a stone or something is coming toward it. So your bodies and our brains are interacting all the time. The largest producer of serotonin in the body, which is the chemical that's associated with honor and connection and community, that serotonin, that happiness chemical, is actually, I think, almost 90% produced here in the stomach. So our connection neurologically between our bodies and our brains is much deeper than we used to think. And so I think embodiment, cognitive embodiment, is something that I'm going to be reading a lot more on. And yeah, meat bag. It's a good one, right? Yeah, anyway, so I think cognitive embodiment is something that I'm going to be doing a lot more reading on, and perhaps I'll bring to another live for you, because that's one of the areas of curiosity for me. And I think, okay, so for getting back to the qualities of flow, Mihai said that clear goals, you have to have a clear goal in mind, and then it has to be challenging. And I think challenging is very difficult for some people who are trying to create a state of flow to define for themselves. By challenging, I mean it can't be easy enough that it's boring, intellectually speaking, or physically speaking. It can't be easy enough that it's too easy. Okay, that's not challenging. And it can't be too challenging. If it's too challenging, it's not going to be stimulating enough. So you need something that's just right on that border of being too easy and too hard. That's a really difficult balance. So you have to be able to attempt something that, let's say, you're pretty sure you can do, but still carries that risk of potential failure, just a small risk. So that was like for me when I studied. You know, I'm studying a master's degree and I'm sitting in the library and I'm learning things I've never learned before, and I'm computing massive amounts of information. But here's the thing, as I can move a lot faster intellectually when I'm in a state of flow because of these qualities. It's challenging for me, and it's a lot of fun. So I feel engaged in the information, and the reason I can process a lot more of it is because I'm not using the front part of my brain as much. I start to shut off the front part of my brain, which is associated with the voices in your head and time and your sense of self and who you're portraying yourself to be and your sense of who you're trying to be in the world. We shut those things down in this state of flow, and so you lose track of yourself and you lose track of time, which is very interesting, right? Like 8 or 9 hours can go by and you won't even feel it. It's effortless. You also lose track of a lot of the sense of effort that's required to get through whatever it is that you're doing. So, you know, your prefrontal cortex, which is the youngest part of the human brain, it's the part that's evolved most recently. It can only compute about 120 bits of information at any given time, and someone speaking takes up 60. So if there are two people speaking, I learned this from Stephen Kotler actually. If there's two people speaking at the same time, then that's about it. Your prefrontal cortex is overloaded. You can't process anything else. But if you can get your processing moved from the prefrontal cortex, which is where most of us are all the time, into the back of your heads, into the gray matter, there's billions of bits of computing power back there. Which is why over a period of 9 hours, I can read very quickly, I can absorb an incredible amount of information, and I can write an incredible amount of information very intelligently, very quickly. Without even feeling time going by. That for me is a state of flow. And in a state of flow, I can do public speaking. I know that if I'm well prepared for a speech, I can get up and provide an amazing, entertaining public speaking performance for people, and think about other things while I'm doing it, which is, I know it's a little bit weird, but I can look at the audience, I can think about other things while I'm actually giving a speech. I'm not doing that now, by the way. Well, okay, no, not quite. Briar, no, I'm not entirely in flow now, but I'm getting close. Because this information, a lot of it from a scientific standpoint is new for me. I'm learning the science behind flow because I actually need it. So I'm not in a state of flow. This brings up another thing, which for me, the researchers, Kotler and Mihai, they've forgotten that in order to get into a state of flow, that activity that you're doing, dynamic and risky and challenging and exciting, also has to be comprised of thousands and thousands of micro activities that are instant for you or instinctive for you. You have to be able to do the building blocks of that without thinking. So for example, if you're surfing, you have to be able to pop up onto a board, you have to be able to paddle, you have to be able to balance yourself on the board without really thinking in order to get into a state of flow. For me as a researcher, I have to be able to read. I have to be able to read very quickly and comprehend what I'm reading and sort that information into the right categories in my head without thinking too much, without bringing it here. So you have to be practiced thousands and thousands and thousands of times the little activities that go into the complexity of achieving the large thing. So now another thing that I have is, Wazor, how are you? Welcome. One of the other things that I've collected in terms of my flow states, I can do exercise, I can do public speaking, I can do research, and I can run obstacle course races. So on my obstacle course races, very often, 5 or 6 kilometers will go by and I won't have even noticed that I've been running them or that I've actually completed the challenges or anything. So this, for most of us, we'll have this experience when we're driving. If you've lived in one place for any number of years and you've worked in the same place for any number of years, you'll find yourself driving to and from work without even really thinking about what you're doing. It's effortless. And the reason it's effortless is because your brain has been able to build such incredibly stable patterns for how that drive is supposed to go that you can operate a 2-ton bullet between your house and your office every single day without even thinking about it. Now, I know it sounds a little bit scary, but you are at a very heightened place of performance and a very low place of awareness during that time. You're not extremely aware of what you're doing, but you are taking in all of the information and you're able to react quickly if something happens. That is a state of flow that almost everybody has experienced if you're a driver. Have any of you experienced the state of flow? What are the activities that bring you into that state where you don't know yourself, you don't recognize yourself, you don't recognize time, what you're doing is complex and effortless and fun? Writing? Yeah, definitely. For me as well, I can write for hours in a state of flow. It's not always intelligent, mind you, but I can write. Video editing, yeah, that's really good. One of my first companies in Estonia was video production. Actually, we did media production, and so I had a great editing machine, and I learned how to use Adobe After Effects, way back in those years, and it was not intuitive at that time. I'm telling you, like Adobe has done so much since then. But yeah, I could work in After Effects in Flow. Sketching, very good. Yeah, excellent. I'm a terrible sketch. I can't draw. I can't draw stick people without forgetting a limb. I'm so bad. Like my drawing skills will never be good. I love whiteboards when I'm teaching, but I can't draw. I can draw diagrams, but not anything intelligent. Anyway, so for those of you who know that there's kinds of activities that you want to get into a state of flow in, number one ingredient is you have to have practiced the sub-activities for that state of flow thousands and thousands of times. If you want to do research in a state of flow, you have to be a good, disciplined, fast reader. You have to spend hundreds of hours reading so that you have the ability to read quickly without thinking about it too much. Writing, same thing. You have to have hundreds of hours of writing under your belt so that you can write, you can type without thinking, without noticing what you're doing, without being too much aware of what you're doing. If it's a sport like CrossFit, sometimes in CrossFit I can get into flow, but it's only because I've practiced those movements thousands and thousands and thousands of times, so I can put those movements together into a new exercise and I can get into a state of flow. So practice the sub-routines or the sub-activities that you need in order to get into the state of flow during the complex activity that you're looking at. And then pick the best time of day for you. I think that's really important. I'm a morning person. I am not an afternoon person. I cannot stay in flow past 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I can get into a state of flow from 6 in the morning. That's not a problem. And then I can usually get back in probably around 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I can get back in and stay in until midnight if I need to. Also really important to eliminate distractions. One of the best tools that I've used for eliminating distractions is, oh, Ange, hiking. Yes! Hiking, a long hike can go by so quickly without, if you're in a state of flow, you can just think about nothing. And it is one of the most enlightened states that you can be in. So, hang on, I'll get to your question in a sec there, Briar. Yeah, I think eliminate distractions is really important. So for me, my trick is trip hop. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It is a genre of music. So on Spotify, I pick a trip hop playlist and I plug in my headphones, and then I just, within 2 minutes, I can't even hear the music. I don't hear the music, I don't hear the lyrics, I can't hear anything around me. All I can focus on is what's right in front of me. So for me, in order to do it with research, it's earphones and trip hop. And then, yeah, that brings me to the last thing, which is ritual entry. You should build a ritual about entering the state of flow so that you can enter it consistently in the same way. It also trains your brain to expect that this is what you want to get into. And then what it does is it lowers the frequency of your thinking down to about 8 hertz. And when you're down at around the 8 hertz level between theta and alpha, you'll slip into flow. Yeah, millennials, less likely to get into flow since they're less likely to put in the hours to really master a skill. That's a tough one. Honestly, millennials are super distracted. And so it's been really, really difficult, I think, for millennials to learn the skill of flow and to experience flow. So they use other ways, other means of getting into flow, like EDM music has become extremely popular because it also helps people to develop that kind of brain disembodiment, let's call it disembodiment, where you're outside of time and outside of yourself. So getting into what they would call a trance, that's very helpful. If you meditate, that's very helpful in getting yourself into that kind of state. But for millennials, I think it's going to be a particular challenge, because they struggle with committing the amount of time is necessary to develop the subroutines as instinctive tasks that they can compile into something that's very complex so that they can get into flow. That's number one. And number two, they really struggle with getting out of distraction. They've been programmed to seek dopamine through instant gratification, like likes on Facebook or waves on Instagram, and that instant gratification really fights against their desire to get into flow. If they do want to get into flow, they really have to shut down all of those distractions, and that's very difficult for most millennials. So I agree with you, Briar. I think that they're going to struggle more getting into flow because of the kind of environment that they've been living in. Yeah, if only there was a switch. Hey, Alicia, yeah, that'd be nice, right? Overthinking. Yeah, overthinking. I can do that too. Overthinking slips me into worry, and worry is like regret, but in reverse. So regret is when you give emotional energy in the present to something that cannot change in the past, and worry is the same. So you're giving emotional energy to something in the future that hasn't happened. What makes worry worse is that you have some control over it most of the time. And if you don't have control, then you don't have control. But in the case of worry, there's something that you can do because whatever it is that you're giving emotional energy to in the future hasn't actually occurred. Yeah. If only there was a switch. Really good questions. Thanks, Laura. Is there anything else that you guys want to learn about flow that I can help you with now? So you're all going to be plugging in your headphones and listening to trip hop in the next couple of days to see if you can get into a state of flow. I really encourage you to figure out how to get into that state of flow for yourselves. Everybody is a little bit different. And if you can do it, you'll find that you're so much more productive. Studies have shown that you can learn 400 to 500% faster in a state of flow. They're using it in the military now to teach people languages, and language learning that used to take 6 months now can take 6 weeks with sensory deprivation and flow training. So it is an absolutely brilliant cognitive tool, and if you learn how to develop it for yourselves, you'll be much stronger as thinkers. All right, thank you so much for your great questions and good interaction today. I've loved talking about flow, and if there's anything else that you want me to do the reading and research on, it's easy for me. So please send me your questions and I will develop something for the future, and we'll meet again. All right, thank you so much. Bye.